In 2001, after 4 years away, Talli Yazzie returned to her reservation in Arizona to say goodbye to her ailing grandmother. And while driving through the desert with her young son, she soon realized that they were not alone. Something was out there with them, something as cunningly swift as it was malicious. She heard this tapping and the familiar voices and whispers and feared that this unknown being would never let her leave. This is Talli's account of what happened to her. It's retold from her journal, discovered years later on this reservation. One foot may lead us to an evil way, but the other foot may lead us to good. Eagle Chief. I left Arizona when I was 17, and I moved to California with my then boyfriend Lee. And yes, his not being from my reservation or a Native American did play a part in my leaving. I'd be lying if I said that it wasn't, but it wasn't the whole reason. I loved my family, but growing up on that reservation could feel stifling. It wasn't just being around my relatives or with the many rules and ways, but more than that, it was a feeling. And from a young age, I never really felt settled there, as though there was some kind of bad energy in the air. It was one that no amount of burning sage or good luck chance could erase. It was only on leaving that reservation and all of Arizona that unsettled feeling finally subsided, and I embraced life in this unknown place with unknown people. And the same year, I fell pregnant with my son Kai, and by the time he was born, Lee had left me for another woman. I had moments of anger and resentfulness, but I knew better than to dwell on that bad energy. I looked forward to the future and my new adventure as a mother. I told my family back on the reservation about Kai. I sent them photos and I stayed in touch as much as I could, but I didn't have any intentions of going back. I should have known that it was only a matter of time before my past clawed me back. And in this instance, it was because my grandmother had fallen sick. She was as old in years as she was wise. And as a result, when I got that phone call, I had an inkling that her end was near, and I didn't want to miss that opportunity to say goodbye to her. So early the next morning, I packed up my car. I put Kai, then 3 years old, in the back, and we began our 11-hour journey. That was a tiring journey. It was worsened by my skipping thoughts. I stopped multiple times to give us both a break and grab something to eat and fill up the car. By the time I arrived to Monument Valley, the sun seemed to fade to dusk in this haze of reddish purples, and it was as beautiful as it was ominous. And I felt this tingling sensation begin in my fingertips and spread throughout my body. I tried telling myself that was nothing, that the journey was long and my feelings were just heightened. And coming home after 4 years away, that's hard. Although saying goodbye to my grandmother was important enough for me to make this long drive with a young child, I was anxious about how it would unfold. I knew that there were these layers to saying goodbye, the ones that I wanted to uncurl in an empathetic and an understanding manner. I was just overthinking it until the prospect of me saying or doing the wrong thing seemed to just shake in my head. That's when I heard the tapping sound. It was this tapping sound that I was clearly coming from outside. My heart just stopped, so did my thoughts. For seconds, I felt and I thought nothing but empty dread. And then I turned and I checked to see that it wasn't Kai making that noise, even though I was certain that the sound was coming from outside. And he was fast asleep. His snuggly Wolfy, was cuddled in his arms. And I stayed in that silence, and I tried to convince myself that I'd imagined it. I was in the middle of the desert. There's no cars around, and I was going at a reasonably quick speed. No one, human or animal, could keep up with me to tap on my car. And I told myself that it must be the wind or just my own imagination, and I just carried on driving, quietly humming Hushabye Baby, the nursery rhyme I sometimes sang to Kai, trying to calm my nerves. And as I reached a curve in the road, I heard that tapping again. But this time it vibrated off the front passenger window, and In turn, it seemed just to shiver through my entire being. I thought about stopping the car. I even lingered my foot over the brake, but then I told myself that's stupid. If something's after me, I couldn't slow down and let it in. So my eyes flitted to the doors to double check that they were locked, and then I just sped up as much as I could without reaching danger speeds. And silence seemed to return, and I checked on Kai in the rearview mirror, seeing that he was asleep, but then Wolfy wasn't in his arms anymore. It must have fallen onto the floor. I just hoped he didn't wake up crying for it. I didn't want to have to stop the car to get it. Those worries, they pecked at me, and I just tried and I failed to shake them away. I started humming Hush-A-Bye Baby again as I carried on driving along this vast emptiness of road. These thoughts flitted through my mind. One of them stuck. It was this memory. I must have been around 7 or 8, and for weeks I'd had the same nightmare. This creature, neither fully human or animal, lurked in the shadows of a nowhere place, and it tried reaching for me as it stared at me through these white, soulless eyes. And then one night, when I woke up damp and shivering in fright, Daho, my uncle, comforted me. He told me that it was no nightmare. That's a vision forewarning me that I've been blessed with foresight. Then he took this talisman charm from around his own neck, his hand carved from buffalo bone, and he placed it around mine. He told me keep it close to me and it would help keep me safe. Then he left the room. But then he turned to me with this seriousness I couldn't explain. He said, "Talli, don't speak to them. Don't look at them. Just stay silent when they call your name." At the time, I never thought to ask Daho any more about this, but I always kept the talisman very close to me. I felt this twinge of sorrow, knowing that I wouldn't be able to speak to Daho about that when I reached the reservation, because he had died 2 summers after he had given me his talisman. After that, I never had a nightmare again. Then a sound coming from outside forced me back to reality. It sounded like a running sound, but one that was so swift that it just seemed to just turn into the wind. And I didn't understand that. So I looked at my side mirrors. I saw this dark shadow just running on all 4s. In a horrified blink, it faded, but those sounds of the movement outside my car remained. It didn't make any sense to me. I mean, what creature could match my car speed, but fade into the dusk? And before I could even think of a reason behind it, this tapping started on the doors, and then the windows. It was just encasing me in this tirade of sound. "Let me in." That was a whispery voice. It seemed to come from nowhere. "Talli, please let me in. Please, Talli, save me." It knew my name, and I recognized that voice. That was my grandmother's. My eyes were filling with tears, but I just wiped them on my arm. And I made myself keep on driving because I couldn't stop that car. I couldn't let whatever it was out there in. "Talli, let me in, else I will perish." The whispering voice continued, just transforming into this tone void of all kindness. "Talli, let me in, else cause my endless death." I heard the door handle rattle as something bashed into the side of my car. It was causing it to shake and shudder along the road. I gripped that wheel. I was barely able to keep control, and I screamed out, "Hush-A-Bye Baby." I silently pleaded with the spirits to protect us, and I just kept on driving. I mean, I didn't know what else to do. The taps and the whispers now turning into shudders and demands. All the while, I just gripped that talisman charm. I hoped that Kai would just sleep through this nightmare. I should have known that it would be inevitable that his nap would end eventually. I don't know if it was the whispered calls or just this natural happening that woke Kai up. I just remember hearing Mommy called through those wicked whispers. Hey, Kai. I turned, I smiled at him, trying to sound as natural as possible. Not long now. Wolfy, he cries out. Mommy will find it soon. I said, and I just looked back at the road, and the whispered hums came from outside of the car. Those hums that took the form of something familiar. It was my grandmother's voice. It went from humming to singing Hush-a-bye baby in this haunting tone. Then Kai placed his hands over his ears and he just started to cry. I tried to comfort him, and I shouted over the singing, but it just made his hysterical sobs increase. And through it all, I heard him call out, Wolfy, Wolfy, Mommy, I want Wolfy. And I told him Mommy would find Wolfy. I just needed to sing to get us to that reservation, and I told him, sing with me. I was just trying to distract him. I was trying to block out the noise. Hush-a-bye baby on the treetop, when the wind blows, the cradle will hush, and when the bow breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come baby, cradle and all, and I just repeated that line, and I could hear it. My grandmother's voice copying me. My singing turned to that quiet hum, and I heard it out there. Out right there alongside my car. Words in her voice, now different than mine. Down will come Kai, Talli, and all. I wanted that to stop. I wanted it to stop tormenting us, to stop tormenting my son. I started to scream out loud. I was going to tell him to stop it, to leave us alone, but then I started to say that the words caught in my throat because I remembered what Daho had said, you stay silent when they call your name. I bit my lip. I was forcing myself to be silent. I only opened my mouth to whisper to Kai, honey, Mommy needs you to be a brave boy. Be quiet, please. Please stay quiet for Mommy. And he continued to let out those terrified sobs and kept his hands pressed over his ears. I don't know if he could hear my words, but I hoped I'd manage to soothe him somehow. I just wanted to be able to cuddle him close to me and tell him that it would be okay. I felt like I was failing as a mother. I couldn't stop the car. I couldn't let whatever it was out there in. I clamped my mouth shut. I tried to just ignore that tapping and the rattling and the whispers of my name in my grandmother's sickly voice. It all got too much. I took my attention off the road, and then I saw it right there in the middle. That creature on all fours. It was like a shadow in the dusk. I slammed the brakes on. My car was skidding to a stop as I smacked into the wheel. And Kai cried out, but it sounded distorted. My ears were ringing in time with my frenetic mind. I'd seen something right there in the road, and now there was nothing. I gripped the wheel, not knowing what to do. Then the tapping started. The door rattled. My car shook. And my grandmother's haunting, sickly voice called out, Talli, open the door, Talli. Let me in. And I screamed, stop it. Go away, please. Go away. Silence. And then I started the car and I started driving. And Kai was talking again, crying for Wolfy. I begged him to be quiet with hushes and please, Kai, please be quiet for Mommy. And he sobbed for Wolfy, and I couldn't stop him. I had to keep on driving until I was out of that nightmare, shaking and whispering the call of my name. It just all seemed to combine into one. Then silence fell. This unnatural silence. I couldn't even hear Kai's heavy sobs. I turned to look at him, to tell him that it'd be okay. At the window, I saw them right there. Those eyes, those white, soulless eyes were fixated right on me, an almost glow in the dusk. I screamed as I put my foot on the gas. I had to get away from it. I had to put distance between me and whatever that thing was. I didn't stop. I wouldn't stop. I slowed down eventually, but my heart didn't. When I reached the reservation, I thought my heart may pop through pure exhilaration. My relatives walked up to me. They told me my grandmother was calling me and for me to be quick, as she didn't have long left. I didn't have time to explain what had happened. I kissed Kai on the forehead as I passed him to my cousin. I made her promise that she wouldn't take her eyes off him, not for 1 second. Then I took that talisman charm from around my neck and I put it around his. As I followed my relatives inside, I tried to find calmness. I didn't want to upset my grandmother in her final moment. Her room was at the end of the corridor, darker inside than it was outside. I smelt the fading smell of burning sage, but I also smelt something else, too. I don't know what it was. It was the scent of not knowing, maybe. I knelt next to the bed, barely recognizing the frail woman within it. I didn't know what to say to her. As I started to talk, she pulled a hand from beneath her cover and she touched my arm with these frail fingers and then croaked out, "Talli, I know it came for you. Don't worry, I stopped it. Hush now, baby. Hush now." And I was about to ask her what she meant and why she said those words, but then her arm felt limp and her eyes rolled back, her soulless white eyes. It was an almost glow in the almost dusk. My relatives flitted past me and I lost myself to time. I remember rushing to Kai and holding him tightly, and in my ear he sobbed for Wolfy, but he seemed to take some comfort in that talisman charm. I checked the back of the car, but Wolfy wasn't there. I couldn't think properly back then. There was too much going on to process it. Sage, the wrong smell, chatters turning to whispers. I went back into my grandmother's room, and I saw my aunt there. She was crying as she held my grandmother's lifeless hands in hers. That's when I saw it gripped under my grandmother's arm, pressed to the spot right above her heart. Wolfy. I stared at it in disbelief, noticing holes like claw marks and bile-like yellowish-brown stains on it that were not there before. I stared at that. Unable to find words, I stared at it until there was nothing left unseen to stare at. And then as I backed out of there, I whispered under my breath, "Wolfy, Wolfy, Wolfy." One of my relatives came over to me and led me out of that room. He said that he saw more than loss in my eyes. He asked me to tell him what had happened. I saw his gaze harden as I told him about that creature tormenting Kai and me in the desert. He touched my shoulder and he whispered, "That was a skinwalker. It's gone now. Your grandmother made sure of that." And I gasped in pure distress, and then I held my breath. Daho had warned me. All those years ago, he'd given me his talisman charm to protect me, and I believed that without it, that thing would have gotten into my car. Daho knew that something was after me, and I believe so did my grandmother. And I don't know how she saved Kai and me. I just know that she did, and that we owe her our lives. I will never forget how she saved my son. Talli Yazzie left that reservation a few months after her grandmother's passing, and she never returned to the reservation, but Kai now lives there. It is Kai who discovered his grandmother's old journal hidden away on the reservation. When he asked her about it, she said that she needed to write an account of what happened for her own clarity, but she knew better than to take it with her and to burden them both. She gave him permission for him to use her words as he wished. And Kai didn't remember that car journey in the desert all those years prior, but he did remember Wolfy. He now believes, as Talli does, that their grandmother saved them from that skinwalker, a malevolent witch believed to be able to shapeshift into animals, but the price that she paid came at a cost. To this day, Kai still wears that talisman charm that his mother gave him. If he ever hears a tapping in the dusk or a whisper of his name, he knows there is one thing he must do without fail: stay silent when they call his name. Share your family story right here in the comments. The protective charms, the warnings, the traditions that kept you safe. Subscribe if you believe that these stories should be remembered. Share this video to help others find our storytelling circle. Thank you for keeping these memories alive. We'll see you in the next video.